Men blame others so they can justify not taking responsibility. You can blame anyone. I know I have in the past. Your wife, your job, your past, as long as it keeps you from looking in the mirror. Here's the thing about blame. It's definitely more comfortable. It feels productive in the moment. It allows you to justify why things are not your fault. Responsibility, on the other hand, is confrontational. It is uncomfortable. Because the moment you take ownership, you lose the comfort of making excuses. Then you gain the power to act. Responsibility isn't punishment. Ownership isn't surrender. It's leadership. And that's what we're going to talk about today on Man vs. Marriage, the podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Man vs. Marriage. It is I, your humble servant, the Q-Dog, rocking the new specs. So, give me a little bit of grace. I demand you. Am I making excuses? No. But the way these progressive lenses work, you've always got to look down to read his notes. And while I'm speaking to you from the heart, I want to make sure that I cover these points. So, we're talking today about blame shifting. And I have heard ad nauseum men that blame their wives for how they act. And it, to me, is unacceptable. I'm not saying that your wife doesn't play a part in the state of your relationship. However, what I am here to tell you is that you cannot blame other people, whether it's your wife or anyone else, for what you are supposed to have ownership over. And what are you supposed to have ownership over? It is focus on what you can affect. Your attitude, your actions, your effort, and your intentions. Those are up to you. The goal here in who we are becoming here at Man vs. Marriage is not to allow our circumstances to dictate our attitude. And when you allow outside situations, or you allow your spouse or other people to control whether you are taking action or not, to control the things that you are supposed to focus and affect, then you are surrendering ownership. You are surrendering your responsibility, and you're looking for someone to blame so that you don't have to take responsibility for that. How do you know this, Quincy? Talking to myself in the third person, obviously. Because I used to be you. And I had to learn these things about myself. That's how I know. So let's talk about these things. Here's some talking points that I want to cover. I want to make you aware of some things. And if these are something that are relatable to you, then great. You're here. You're in the right place. If you start thinking about other people rather than yourself, you may need to reconsider and look in the mirror and evaluate what you may have going on. That's not to say that what I'm going to talk about today isn't reflected in other people's personalities, but it's important that we focus on what we can affect. Now, with that being said, I'm going to be very vulnerable to you guys today because I'm going to talk about a recent experience where I failed and I needed some accountability. And it had to do right here with personal responsibility and taking ownership. So, do you know what the difference is? Do you know what it means when you are in service to someone rather than providing an act of service for someone? Do you know there's a difference? Because I had to come to terms with that. Now, look, you, like we've talked about in this program many times, expectations that are silent, like if you're not honest, let's say this instead, roll the tape back. There are expectations that you have in your life when you go to do something, and you may not communicate those. You may even tell yourself, I'm not doing it with this expectation in mind. But when that expectation doesn't get met, you really have the opportunity to look at it and say, oh, maybe there was a hidden expectation within me that I was either A, not honest about, or B, wasn't aware of. So it can be a growing moment. Then there's emotionally justifying how you act, how you talk, and how you treat people by shifting the blame to other people when you act in such a manner, or when you do not do A, B, or C. Here's the thing about it. It's like you blame people quietly in your life, and that quiet blame turns into resentment. And that resentment starts to build. And that when it comes to a head, when you've had enough and you can't suppress that garbage anymore, then it becomes an emotional reaction. And the fact is that maybe that's one thing going on inside of you. And then there are other circumstances that are continually coming your way, external pressures that are happening. And it brings this situation to a head. And then it reveals what that area of your character is actually like in the moment, with how you react or with how you respond. The thing about responsibility, though, and taking ownership, is that will restore your credibility. Now, there are sometimes when I overtake responsibility. And so any strength overextended becomes a weakness. But at this point, we need to evaluate ourselves, and we need to learn. There are things that we need to learn about ourselves and that quiet dialogue that's going on, so that we can see, let's evaluate, am I blaming other people for my inaction? Am I blaming other people for my problems? Am I using phrases like, well, if my wife would just decide X, Y, and Z, then I could do this or that? Because in my opinion, that's absolutely unacceptable. Let's move on. Let me talk to you about a recent example. I'm a part of this group with Andy Frisilla, and there's this app, this productivity app that challenges you to like really be as productive as possible, to step out of your comfort zone, to grow. And you have 5 critical tasks that you must do. You decide what they are, you do them, you execute them, and it helps you drive closer and closer to that man or that woman or that professional that you are becoming. And it helps you get these projects done in a much more efficient manner. And so part of that is journaling. And in that journaling, it evaluates where you are in that dialogue that's going on within you. So the more honesty you employ, the better feedback you get. And I had decided one day that I was going to do something to help Jeannie. I haven't even talked to her about this. I'm actually just bringing it to the program so that you know where I am and what I had to do. And so I was going to, she's been very busy fighting hard to get a book done. And this book has been a significant challenge because of the things that have been going on in life with the holidays, with our daughter going off to boot camp. We have some girls that are preparing to move, out of the house. Life is changing. Autism, I'm going to tell you, autism has been extremely, extremely difficult in our lives right now. It is providing a significant amount of adversity when I'm home and when I'm traveling on the road. And that is a full-time, full attention job when you're here. It is unrelenting. And we're working through some regression that we've had with our kids with autism and looking at how can we take some of that territory back and get them in a more structured routine. It's hard to think about when you go days without sleeping or a few days with just a very little bit of sleep, and then you have the responsibilities of the day, and you're trying to go above and beyond that and write a novel or do anything outside of your normal day-to-day. So there is a lot of adversity there. So it's something as simple as cleaning the kitchen, washing the dishes, taking care of that, taking that off of her plate, so to speak. And I decided within myself, I said, you know what? I'm going to do this for her to help her out. And I'm going to do it because I love her. I'm going to do it in service to her. Well, she didn't say thank you. If she said thank you, I didn't even hear it. And guess what? I got into my feelings. I got upset. I got frustrated. And so internally, I started to grow in resentment in a short amount of time. And I was honest about that. I had to be honest about it. I had to review. Let me stop saying review. Let me go back to say I had to evaluate, why was I acting this way? Because I'm not just telling you guys to go and listen to your quiet dialogue. I actually do that myself because I want to know what is going on in me. Why was I acting some sort of way? Because doing something in service to someone is categorically different than providing a service or serving someone. Let me take a minute to draw out what I mean here. When you provide a service to someone, you also provide an invoice to that someone for services rendered. When you are in service or acting in service to someone, you are acting in service and submitting no invoice at all because you are providing this voluntarily as an act of kindness in service to whom it is you love or you are taking care of. So in this situation, I was looking for an attaboy. I was looking for a thank you. I started to make it about me. And then I started blaming her for my poor attitude, for my frustration, for my irritation. I started blaming her why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I may have taken that out on some of the other people that were around, namely my kids, maybe even my dogs. And I really had to take a step back and evaluate, hey, bro, you are making this situation about you, and you're starting to act in such a way that is not honorary to your own words. So are you going to blame someone else for what you're supposed to have an effect on, for what you have a control over, or not? And so my words come back and hold me accountable. So I put this dialogue into the journal. And the feedback that I got was simply that when you act in service to someone, you are not allowed to provide them an invoice. Because if you do, you've made this situation about you rather than performing an act in service to them. And it grew me up. It grew me up very quickly. And so as I took a step back and I began to evaluate where I was and what was going on, I was able to see more clearly where I allowed my ego to get involved in being in service to my wife and where I made it about me. So I want to ask you, where are you in this situation? Where are you? Are you as a leader? Let me ask you this in the moment, nothing planned. No, this note is not in my notes. What is leadership to you? Is leadership walking around and telling people what to do and why to do it and why they have to listen to you? Or do you employ in your home and in your life servant leadership, which is being in service to others? I'd like to know. I'd like to know where you line up on that. There's a time and place for asserting your authority and leading the way. There's also a time and place for leadership that is in service to the people that are around you. And in your home, that's a very, very valuable place. You've heard me before, if you listen to this podcast, talk about where my first example of that comes from. And truthfully, the one that's most obvious to me, and it may not be the first one, but the first one I recognized as I started to go through this, is Jesus. My faith. As Jesus went and washed his disciples' feet. And there were some disciples that they weren't having that. Namely, I believe it was Peter that's like, you cannot wash in my feet. And he's like, if I don't wash your feet, you have no place with me. Because the Son of Man didn't come to be served, he came to serve. And it's very interesting when Jesus talked about how we should be in service to one another. And then it's even written in Ephesians, which says, hey, love your wife as Christ loved the church. So much so that he gave himself for it. So even Paul talked about being in service and laying down your life. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're a pushover. It doesn't mean you're being taken advantage of. It means you are a demonstration of what taking responsibility looks like to your family. And you give them something to model as you do that. And look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, as Rocky Balboa said. But in my vulnerability, my prayer is that it would encourage you to evaluate yourself and then look at why you do what you do, which is what we've been challenging you with for quite some time. Are you blame shifting? Are you justifying your lack of leadership, your lack of ownership, your lack of taking responsibility by blaming other people in your life? The beauty is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are right now. What matters is when you make the choice into who you are becoming and you change paths and you start to live this lifestyle so that your family can see you, that your family hears your words, and then your actions align with those words. I'm not here to say that you cannot have any emotions, because we all have emotions. We are emotional creatures, men and women alike. The problem is when you submit to those emotions, and those emotions are built on a foundation of resentment, then you start to lash out at those around you. Then you lack the internal integrity. You stop believing in who you are. And then you project those things onto the people around you. And it's not healthy. And then your authority suffers because of it. I say this probably almost in every program. How do you know this, Quincy? Maybe that's what you're asking right now. Maybe you have a case of the yeah, but this, yeah, but that. The yeah, buts. Why do I know this? How do I know this? Because I used to be this. As a matter of fact, as recently as about a week and a half ago, I did this. And I'm here to make myself accountable to you guys, because if I'm walking through these things, I'm certain that you are walking through these things. Responsibility does not deny emotion. It just refuses to outsource the ownership of that emotion. Emotions are okay. It's what power we surrender to those emotions that can become a problem. Once you own your part, you finally have something that you can change. The responsibility and the ownership. That's where these two worlds come together. That is the path forward for who you are becoming. Here's a side note before we close. If you do not have a vision of who you are becoming, then you may be confused about where you're going and how to get there. I'm challenging you, I'm calling you to identify the man that you want to become. That's where this begins. If you don't have that, we need to get you there. We need to open your horizons to there so that you can start to challenge yourself each and every day with the man that you are becoming. Certainly, one of those identifiers to let you know if you're on that path or you maybe have stepped off that path is, where is your personal responsibility? I want to thank you for listening to the program today. If you're watching the program, you're welcome. Look at these fine specks the cute dog has on his face. They're quite naturally the most beautiful thing on the planet. That's not true. Now listen, I want to invite you to check out our YouTube page. That YouTube page could use your help. Candidly, it is my fault. So I would appreciate you going there and checking the program out. And then whatever you find as a value in this, share it with another guy that you believe can benefit from it. Be specific in what it helped you with. Be specific in, I found this out about myself, dude. I wanted you to check it out in case you can relate as well. So if you're going to listen, that's where the majority of our traffic is. Spotify, Apple, etc. It's all in the audio. But we would really like to build that crowd on YouTube. So if you wouldn't mind the second go around when you listen, go check it out on YouTube and share both links and help us grow this platform in order to reach more hearts and minds with men that are like us, so that we can make a positive impact on their life, a positive impact on their home, and then a positive impact on our culture and society. So that's it for this particular episode. Thank you again for listening. For more, go to QuincyMoran.com. You have an email you want to send me, Quincy@MVSMpodcast.com. Until the next one, boys, go and get after it. I am the Q Dog, and this is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast.